The last time I posted a video was July 11th, exactly 2 weeks ago. And the reason for this is because I moved into a new house and then Comcast jerked me around for the next 2 weeks. To give a very brief explanation, one of the previous tenants in this house apparently did something involving with fraud, and that blocked this house. When I tried to get this house unblocked when I moved in, I was thrown from department to department and nothing ever got done for a full week. Finally, they came in here to install my internet, and all they had to do was give me a new modem. So I've missed roughly 2 weeks of work. My views have dropped. I'm probably going to be thrown out of people's suggested videos now because people haven't been able to watch my videos because I've not been able to post anything. This also means I lost Twitch subs, didn't get bits that I would usually get. In general, I am losing about half a month's worth of money because of Comcast messing up. I know, Comcast not doing their job. It's crazy, right? And no, I can't swap ISPs. Comcast has a monopoly on the city, and the only other reasonable option I have is CenturyLink, an option that makes Comcast look competent. So here's what I need from you guys. I need you guys to link this video around anywhere you want. Please like, favorite, comment, doing all that stuff will help me get back into YouTube's algorithm, and then we should be good to go. It sucks that I got set back a little ways, especially since I rely on this money to pay bills and rent, but hey, I am here and I'm going to continue making my videos, I'm going to continue streaming. Thank all of you guys for watching, and fuck Comcast. Hey everyone, Jarek the Gaming Dragon here. If you're already subscribed and you haven't clicked that bell, be sure to do that, otherwise YouTube won't tell you that I posted anything. If you haven't subscribed, well, watch this video and maybe consider subscribing if you like it. Alright, Bad Company 2. I have mixed experiences with this game. I remember playing it back in the day and really liking it, but like most of you, I really liked it for the multiplayer, as it was some of the best of all time. But in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the single player, which seems to be sort of lost on the internet just because of how good the multiplayer was. Keep in mind, multiplayer shooters are what I do, but in order to do a proper analysis video for a multiplayer game, you need to really know what's going on in the meta. If I wanted to make an analysis video for Bad Company 2's multiplayer, I would have to put a few hundred more hours into the game to re-immerse myself with the game. Basically, I would have to be so good at the game, or at least so invested in the game, that I fully understand every mechanic inside and out. Multiplayer, you have to do justice, especially since if you don't, you look like a scrub that doesn't know what he's doing, because you probably are. Remember, almost anyone can be a top player in any game, as long as you have the time to put thousands upon thousands of hours into getting good at that game. So the only game I would really be able to reasonably do that with as of right now is probably Rivals of Aether, but I don't think most of you guys really care about that game since it's not a first-person shooter. I mean, it's furry trash mash. None of you guys really care about this. I love it, but that's personally me. Anyway, Bad Company 2's single player. I remember liking it back in the day, but I don't remember it really being one of my favorite experiences. Let's start where we usually do. Graphics. For its time, it looks fantastic, and it's definitely passable today. Although at times I feel like they make the bloom a little bit too much and it's hard to see anything through all the dirt and bloom and effects. There's no denying that it looks good though. It may be a little outdated as this game is nowhere near new, but still, it's way more than passable. Bad Company 2 also came out on PC, and as such has aged a lot more gracefully than the original game, which was stuck in the Xbox 360 and PS3. Consoles that are very outdated nowadays. Bad Company 2 for the most part is a great PC game. It has everything you should be expecting on PC, all the settings are there, but it's missing one thing. Jarek the FOV Dragon is back, there's no FOV slider, and the default FOV is really bad. Now for the multiplayer section, you can just change the FOV in an INI file, but this doesn't work for the single player. You'll need to download a program called Widescreen Fixer, and this honestly really isn't that bad. You simply open the program, you set what FOV you want, and then when you press a hotkey, it'll change to the new FOV. Easy. The problem is that this game doesn't really take into account that you're running a wider FOV, so if you're wanting to use a scope, it doesn't really zoom in and it makes it difficult to shoot anything. But you can activate and deactivate the FOV by pressing a hotkey. I set it to Q, so anytime I really needed to zoom in, or if I needed some extra zoom, I would just go to the default FOV, shoot, and then press it again to go back to the FOV I wanted. This is also important because the cutscenes are not made for a wider FOV, and the wider FOV stays in the cutscene. So during cutscenes, you're going to want to go back to default FOV. Again, this is very easy. It's just press one key and you're back to default FOV or the new one that you wanted. To give you an idea of how bad this FOV is, this right here, this whole screen is a new FOV. The default FOV is just those binoculars in the middle. Even if you're a console player that never cared about changing your FOV, this is an FOV that should bother you. You'd have to be sitting a good 20-25 feet back from your TV to make this FOV look natural. Otherwise, it just looks like you're looking at the screen through binoculars. Regardless, it's an easy fix and it gives you some extra zoom if you really need it, so it's kind of an advantage to PC players. But to reiterate, you do need this program for the single player campaign. Changing it in the INI file only works for the multiplayer. As expected, Bad Company 2 is better than Bad Company 1 when it comes to graphics, and you have the added ability to change your FOV if you're playing on PC. But I can't help but feel that most other things were better in the first game. Let's start with the plot. The beginning of the game is actually pretty interesting. It happens during Operation Aurora during World War II. Effectively, what this mission is doing is showing that the Japanese at this time had a weapon that was capable of killing anyone within this weapon's radius. This is an effective way to show that this weapon is kind of a big deal and you really should be taking it seriously. You don't want this in the wrong hands. But from then on, this game kind of just becomes predictable and not very interesting, because that's all the plot really is. You still play as Preston Marlowe, you still have the same squad of Sweetwater, Haggard, and Redford, but as a whole, it's just to stop the Russians from getting their hands on this same device. That's the whole story of the plot. Of course, there's a big journey to get to this point, and I won't give you the clip notes to tell you exactly how everything played out. I feel like if you're really interested, you probably will just play the game yourself. But this premise of the story is just kind of a little cliche and not very interesting to me. As such, I don't even really want to go into full detail with it. But what I do want to talk about is that I feel that this game lost a lot of personality compared to the first one. As I said, you still play as the same squad, but the writing is toned down. You don't see Sweetwater teaching Haggard how to golf with Haggard using his shotgun as a club in the background. You don't see them playing rock, paper, scissors. You don't hear Redford telling Sweetwater to shut up all the time. Like, all these personality quirks are just kind of gone. Their characters are still there. Sweetwater is still kind of cowardly, but nowhere near as much as they were in the first game. The whole comedic value is almost completely absent. And that was a lot of the reason why you played the first game, and why the characters were so likable. The one time they stepped a character up was with Preston Marlowe, because he was kind of a blank state for the player in the first game. He had some personality, but could have been improved. They did improve it in this game, but in a lot of ways he just kind of feels like the hero of the story, just to pat the player on the back, and not much more. The end result is that this game, story-wise, really does just feel like a modern military shooter, and sort of lacked that character that Bad Company 1 had that made it stand out so much from other modern military games. To make matters worse, the game ends with a big cliffhanger. Yeah, the main conflict ends up being resolved and all that, but the general tells you, hey, the Russians are invading through Alaska, and the game just kind of ends. We'll probably never get a Bad Company 3, they've been talking about it for years, but I'm not really expecting to get one. It's one of those things where I wouldn't mind having one, but I'll believe it when I see it. Either way, I don't really see the point for this ending. It's just setting up for a sequel and not really much more. You could have just ended it after the conflict was resolved and said nothing more, but nope, here's a cliffhanger. And again, it's not really a bad story, so to say, it's just not as interesting as the first game. And a very similar thing can be said to the gameplay. And I'm a little more torn on this than I am with the plot, because some things have genuinely been improved drastically in Bad Company 2. The two biggest things I want to talk about is that, one, enemies no longer take 1,000,000 bullets to die, they die pretty quickly, which is a huge improvement for me. It just feels way better to down someone in a few shots compared to half of your magazine. This also means that guns have a more realistic mag count of only 30 compared to like 45 or 60 like they had in the first game. The whole reason they had a higher mag count in the first game is just because you needed those extra bullets to down enemies. The second big improvement is that you can finally carry more than one gun. You can only carry 2, but that's still better than just being stuck with one gun like in the first game, so you were limited to what you could use. Say you wanted to use a shotgun in Bad Company 1, well, you were just stuck with a shotgun and a grenade. You didn't have much range since enemies had a lot more health, and that was it. You were pretty limited. But if you could carry another weapon, then you could have a shotgun and a gun for range, so you could cover all ranges. Bad Company 2 entirely fixes this. Enemies have less health, so shotguns are more effective, and they really do have range in this game. But also you can carry another gun like a sniper if you really need to snipe someone. Or you could just run with a shotgun with a slug and also have range that way. You have a lot more options when it comes to the weapons in this game. And that's a huge improvement. It just lets the player do what they want to do. Although I will say you never actually find a submachine gun in the campaign, which makes no sense to me because there are SMGs in the multiplayer, so why can't I use all the guns in the multiplayer in the single player? Little bit of a disappointment. Regardless, you do have more options, and there's quite a few crates that allow you to choose whatever weapons you want to use throughout the campaign. Kind of like how Vegas 2 had those green crates where you could choose whatever guns you wanted. I love it when games do this, it adds so much replayability to them. I've explained this before, but when it comes to first-person shooters, your interaction with the world around you is through your gun. And the gun you're using is effectively your character. It determines how you're going to approach different situations. Think of your gun as like a fighting game character. Every fighting game character is going to play that game very differently. Sure, two players playing the same character might look different, but they're still going to have similar fundamentals because a character is made to do a specific thing. Much like an SMG is made to be shot up close, or a shotgun is made to be shot up close, or a sniper is made to snipe. Bottom line, this game gives you more options with guns, and that's a great thing. And enemies don't take a million bullets to go down, which is again a great thing. Unfortunately, all the improvements kind of end there, and the game seems to have gone backward in every other way. Bad Company 1 did a good job converting Battlefield's multiplayer into a single player environment. Lots of open space for you to approach whatever you wanted to do in any way. Lots of vehicles, and honestly it felt like a Battlefield game, just single player, and that's exactly what it should have been. Bad Company 2 doesn't do this. It's a linear first-person shooter at heart and very rarely ever strays away from that. There are way too many combat encounters that just result in you having to go down a narrow funnel into enemies all shooting at you. You only have one way into that spot with no other way to approach them, and they're already shooting at you, resulting in it somewhat being frustrating, but also it not really allowing you to experiment at all. It's just run and shoot enemies and not much more. In fact, this feels a lot more like a Call of Duty game than a Battlefield game. Thankfully, it still has Battlefield's gunplay, which feels pretty good, so the whole game is kind of propped up on that, but I still can't help but feel that this is a big step back from Bad Company 1. This also applies to vehicle combat. Now, I've never been a big fan of vehicles. That's just kind of not who I am. I prefer infantry combat. But anytime there are vehicles in this game, it turns into an on-a-rails segment, which is even worse. Thankfully, I never had to fly a helicopter, but anytime a helicopter did show up, it's just on a rail with a minigun. How entertaining. Yeah, the vehicle sections in this game honestly really do suck. On-a-rail segments are never fun, especially if you end up dying and get sent back to a previous checkpoint. Just to have to wait for this segment to be done, I don't know, it just feels like you're doing a lot of waiting, and I never really cared for on-a-rail segments. I'd rather have control over what's going on. Okay, I'm sounding really negative. Bad Company 2's campaign is a good campaign. It just doesn't do a whole lot to stand out from other modern military shooters of its time, and as a result, just feels like another modern military shooter. Whereas Bad Company 1 is memorable and does feel different. It's a little frustrating because Bad Company 2 has genuine quality of life improvements, but just steps back in every other way. That's where I stand with Bad Company 2. It's a game that I probably won't feel the urge to go back and play through ever again unless I want to play the multiplayer, which is still great, but the single player is just another modern military campaign. I did get a lot of comments when I made a video on Bad Company 1 saying basically the same thing, and in my mind I was thinking, well, I remembered liking Bad Company 2 back in the day. I don't see how that could be the case, but after playing Bad Company 2 myself, yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, the last time I played Bad Company 2 was on launch, so I didn't remember much about the campaign, just the multiplayer. But that should be everything involving Bad Company 2. Thank all of you guys for watching this video. Please go check out my Twitch. I'm gonna need to make up after losing 2.5 weeks or so of not being able to stream. My Twitch is twitch.com/Jarek4GamingDragon. If you subscribe over on Twitch, you'll be able to see my videos one day ahead of time. Same thing applies to my patrons. If you want to go check out my Patreon, there's a link down below in the bottom right here. Check that out. Thank all of you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.